Welcome to the College Football X with your hosts, John Nelson and John Wilkerson.
Welcome back. College Football X continues here on the OSG Sports Network, and there's a situation going on here within our footprint that was worthy of having a segment, and we brought in one of our own who is an alum to this particular university, and it's what's going on at Kennesaw State. It's made news in the Group of Five conferences in Division I, and because of all the fallout, it has made more and more news outside of the Group of Five conferences. Jarrett, I wish it was a different circumstance so we could have you in on a Sunday morning when we tape other things, but this one was kind of big news.
Yeah, man, I would say so. Kennesaw just has decided to not only fry the boot and eat it, but they have decided to take the leftovers and throw it in the toaster oven for a while. Jesus Christ, Kennesaw. Look, man, call it the preamble, if you will. I didn't think Kennesaw needed to make the jump to FBS when they did. I understand that they did it. I understand there's money involved. Kusa calls. Kusa calls, you answer, I guess, man. Whatever. Didn't think they were really ready for it. Facilities, I didn't think were up to snuff for it, but they went for it. And they kind of did the Falcons thing, man. Like the idea of the Falcons being that you can go 2-15 every year. You win those two games against New Orleans, and most people are going to be pretty chill about stuff. Kennesaw put a sharp stick in the eye of Liberty. Everybody was just kind of cool with things at that point. Like, you embarrassed Liberty on a Wednesday night, and you made them feel bad on national television and ruined their national title hopes. Now, granted, I think Jacksonville State buried the hatchet even deeper into their backs the next week. But, yeah, we didn't even get a month of good vibes out of that from Kennesaw State before they fired Brian Bohannon.
And for those that don't know, Brian Bohannon, only coach that the program...
If only it were that simple.
Yeah. Out as head coach at Kennesaw State, and the first and only head coach in the program's history, brought the program up from FCS, where there were playoff berths and deep runs into the 1AA/FCS playoffs, depending on how old you are. Then you make the move up to FBS, the inaugural season, 1-8. Final game was the overtime loss to Texas El Paso this past weekend. You mentioned what happened on a national audience, knocking Liberty out.
Should have beaten UTEP.
Yeah.
They were on the 40-yard. They were on the plus side of the field with about 20 seconds left in that game. Bryson Daniels, who had a really up and down season, throws a pick with 20 seconds left, and they end up going overtime and losing in overtime. But man, that was there to win a road game at UTEP. Are we having a different conversation if he beats UTEP, or are they going to do this anyway?
And that's part of this. So then the wording comes out from social media, and it was phrased by KSU athletic director Milton Overton that the initial statement was that Coach Bohannon decided to step down. Those are the words in quotation marks, decided to step down. Yeah. Then Bohannon comes out on the 280-character app and denied that was in fact the case later Sunday afternoon. Quote, "Contrary to what's been reported, I want to be clear that I did not step down from my position as head coach at Kennesaw State University." End quote. Then Overton comes back with yet another statement after that, issued Monday, clarifying that he, quote, "determined that it was time to make a leadership change to take the football program in a new direction. I advised Coach Bohannon of my decision and, as is customary, offered him the opportunity to announce that he had stepped down. At the conclusion of our meeting, it was my understanding that Coach Bohannon had accepted my offer," end quote. So Overton doubles down on his initial statement that he releases, and then it goes out on social media. We have not had a doubling down of the doubling down from Coach Bohannon's perspective, but right now, two statements out by the athletic director, Milton Overton at KSU, explaining what's going on from his perspective.
Well, it's just damage control at this point, I think, from athletic director Milton Overton, because the second that came, I think it was on 3 put out the original report that he was going to be fired. Mm-hmm. And on 3's growing. there's on 3 can miss on things but again, nobody bats 1,000. So I think there was question about it. Then you get the release of he stepped down. It wasn't just Bohannon. Like, look, man, that was the crescendo of the piece. We established some themes early in this performance, though, when you had current players, including 2 of his sons who play on the team, basically calling out the press the press release saying, no, he didn't quit on us. He would not have quit on us. That's not who he is. Because make no mistake about it, Brian Bohannon was adored. And I think was adored by the sickos among us that are Kennesaw State football fans. Mm-hmm. To your point, John, he was the first head coach in this program. In his infinite wisdom, ran God's chosen offense in his early years before changes to rules and, kind of, I guess, the prep for FBS, kind of facilitated a move to more of like a pistol look. Yeah. From what we see nowadays, but they were running Paul Johnson's playbook for a long time with Chandler Burks under center, basically playing Wile E. Coyote roles. It was really exciting. The hallmark I think is in 18 or 19. They went to I think it was 18. They went to Sam Houston State with basically the Elite Eight of the FCS playoff, had a 4th and goal at like the 5-yard line. If they get it, they win. They would have beaten Sam Houston State in Texas, and they fell short just barely. And I mean, that team was just trucking people left and right. That was a year they beat Liberty that year by like 20 points, and it wasn't that close. He had some very good teams there. I think, in my opinion, John, in the last few years, I thought if you wanted to make a change, you could have done it before now. But I also understand that nobody wants to be a transition coach. Nobody wants to lay on that grenade of transitioning to FBS. But the man was changing his entire offensive structure based on what he came up doing with Paul Johnson. And he was making changes. I thought the recruiting wasn't as good in terms of like what you were getting out of guys, but you still had players. You had a guy drafted in the NFL last year by the Bears, Davidson, and you were beloved by your team. And I thought if you were going to give him this year, I think my setup on it, John, is that if you were going to give him this year, give him the whole year. If he was going to be your transition coach and you were going to send him out of the airlock, let him finish the year. Not a doubt in my mind he'd earned that. And with what he had done with that program, all these years with this school, getting everything off the ground, the successes, the pains, everything about it, he deserved to finish out the year. Now, if after the year you want to have this conversation of, hey, we're going to move in a different direction, how do you want this to be? Yeah. Do you want to say you were fired? Do you want to walk on your own? But you let that man finish out the year. You don't blow him out with a couple games left and now hand this to Chandler Burke, who I think is 28, 29 years old, who is an offensive coordinator who has to now spend a couple of games as he's trying to build his own profile as a coach in this sport as the interim of a program that is going to have apparently a lot of pissed off kids. Mm-hmm. And hopefully he doesn't endure the wrath of any of that. But now he's got to try and make something out of this potluck he's been handed by the administration.
Source told CBS Sports Bohannon had been in the midst of ongoing contract negotiations to rework his deal with compensation befitting an FBS head coach. Bohannon's salary was under $400,000, less than many position coaches make at Power 4 schools. His most recent contract extension came in 2022. Months before the transition to Division 1A was announced, the deal ran through 2026. To follow up on your schedule, that loss at Sam Houston State was in the 2017 schedule. When they finished 12-2. They go 12-2 in the playoffs. They win at home against Samford, number 14 in the country. They win at number 3 Jacksonville State, and then they go to number 6 Sam Houston State and lose 34-27. So they make it to the FCS quarterfinals in 17. Postseason berths in, I want to say 18, 19, and 20. Mm-hmm.
I believe so. I think it was 18 or 19. They ended up playing Samford again and basically in basically a recreation of Passchendaele, where I think the score was like 9-7. But man, like some of those defenses they put together were brutal. Like they were just like they just were unpleasant to play. Like it's already unpleasant to play against a triple option team when it clicks. And Chandler Burke clicked that triple option team so damn well. Because he was kind of Wile E. Coyote about it. He was fearless. Like you need a quarterback who's going to make a dive or get his appendix restructured on a pitch, but he's going to get the pitch off accurately. That's your dude.
Yep.
But man, that defense was mean. Like they were just unpleasant to play against. They just were hurting people at times. Because I think that 12-2 year, I think that loss that year might have been to Charleston Southern, because there was that stretch where like Liberty, Charleston Southern, and Kennesaw just basically took turns kneecapping each other every year.
In that 12-2 season, you end up with the season. The season begins with a loss on a Thursday night to number 19 Samford, 28-23.
Yeah.
Then you go on a run into the Big South, and you get a big run, including a win in Bozeman, Montana, against Montana State, 16-14.
Okay, that game was hilarious, and I can vividly remember watching that game because Kennesaw gets the ball down a point or down 2 points. I can't do math. With like 9 minutes left in the game at their own 10-yard line, and they take like 8 minutes and 50 seconds to get to the 30-yard line and kick a field goal and walk out. And I think there were like 3 fourth-down conversions on that drive, and it was just it was like watching a tank slowly roll, getting 3-4 yards of play over and over and over. And it was the most like Paul Johnson dropped to his knees in a Kroger somewhere when that drive happened.
It was 14-13 at the time, and then Kennesaw goes down the field. The drive, to your point, was the only scoring drive in the fourth quarter. 20 plays.
Yeah.
78 yards.
Yep.
Time of possession 10:03. And the game-winning field goal was kicked with 1:55 on the clock.
I thought there was less time than that, but point being, like just annihilated any hopes and dreams that they had in Bozeman, and like that was, man, that was those days were fun. Also, you had Justin Sumner on that team. Justin Sumner, who was came out of Sandy Creek, was a wide receiver who basically operated like a fast tight end.
Yes.
And was just that prototypical option wide receiver who can block until the day is done, but can also high point a ball. He played in the CFL for a year, I think, before he retired. But man, like, yeah, those teams that he put together were great. And yeah, they had not hit that level with him in the last few years. But if you were going to take him to FBS, John, you let him finish this year.
Yeah.
And you discuss this, and you let that man walk away with dignity, how he wants to walk away. If he wants to say, hey, they fired me because they were done, whatever. But you can't put out the statement that you put out and then like keep digging the ground underneath you, because eventually you're not going to be able to flip the dirt out of the grave anymore. It's just going to fall back on your head.
Paul Johnson was asked about the situation.
And you hope you're not going to tell me Paul Johnson pulled any punches for the first time in his life.
Quote, they put him in a no-win situation.
Mm-hmm.
They move up with no budget, no plans, no facilities, and then you expect that you're going to win, ? That's what Paul Johnson said when he was asked about it in the article by Ken Segura at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
I don't know if you've ever seen the facilities at Kennesaw. They're fine FCS facilities.
Yeah.
That stadium is not up to snuff for FBS. Facilities are not up to snuff. It needs to be better. And I don't know where they're going to put that injunction of cash into it. I'm still always of the opinion, John, and you and I are both local in the Atlanta area, so I know you'll understand this. I've always wondered if like they try and get some land from town center.
Yeah.
And try and build a bigger stadium there. Otherwise, I don't know what the plan is if you're Kennesaw. Like, are you going to go the Idaho route and go back down at some point?
Yeah, I know. That would be but then you're also losing that notion of the financials that were there for you when you went to the Go 5 in the first place. Segura points out also in the AJC. James Madison's athletics website lists 41 coaches and support staff members for football.
Mm-hmm.
Jacksonville State, which is in Conference USA with Kennesaw State, has 46. Including Bohannon, Kennesaw State had 30. 1/3 less than James Madison and or Jacksonville State when it came to staff on the whole that was attached to it. The compensation for coaches, Segura continues. USA Today's assistant coach salary database for 2023 has record of about 80 assistant coaches in Conference USA, the league that Kennesaw joined. 3/4 made $90,000 or more, just under half made $125,000. According to salary records on open payrolls, a database of public employee salaries, the highest paid assistant coach on Bohannon's staff last year of the 9 coaches out of 10 whose data was available made about $75,000. A challenge Bohannon has faced repeatedly in his tenure in losing assistant coaches to high-profile programs, in part because of pay. So
I think he lost his OC to Navy.
I think so, yeah.
And Navy just humming on along now, by the way.
Strange how that works.
But also, and we're going to pile on here because I gave them a lot of money over like 5+ years for a degree.
Full disclosure, Jarrett is an alum for Kennesaw State University and here at OG Sports.
We watched this school 2 years ago. Whether or not they made a private effort to keep Amir Abdul-Rahim, the late great basketball coach who took Kennesaw to the tournament, whether or not they made a private push to keep him, perception is reality, man. It didn't look publicly like they really tried to keep him when FIU came a-calling. That man took that basketball program to heights they had not seen since Tony Ingle was there.
Yeah.
Which, if you are a sicko, you will know that name.
Absolutely.
But they've not always made it look like they really care about keeping the talent. Like, Bohannon's underpaid. He's there, but they're letting guys go. And yeah, you might strike it rich every now and then. You might have a situation like a AAR taking you to the tournament, or you might have a situation like Sansing back in, I think it was 14 or 15, when you went to the Super Regional. Max Pentecost was a top 10 pick in baseball. You might have a situation like football going to Sam Houston, but man, you gotta invest. You got to invest, and you have to retain talent. And I know it's hard because you're going to retain that talent, and guess what? It's not going to work every season. Like, there's going to be years, even when you invest, that it doesn't work. But you got to spend the money, and you got to keep the talent around. Or if you're going to keep growing the talent, you got to understand that there's going to be times when it doesn't always work, and you got to make it. You got to make it look better, man. I don't know what they do. I don't know someone who's not affiliated with the university in any way. Like, man, I don't know what Milton Overton does after this, or the SID, because this is just a terrible look.
Yes.
And now a lot of people who, and I know, like, they kind of became like a meme team for a lot of people when CFB 25 came out. As like, that's the school you take over and you fix.
Yeah.
It's deeper than football, though.
No doubt. And since this is a football show, this is what we'll focus on, and we will keep an eye on the situation where the end of the tenure for Brian Bohannon occurred this week in just odd circumstances, and I'll go ahead and use that, an odd back and forth involving individuals that are tied to a new program on the FBS level. Jarrett, like I said, we need to have you on the X and on the review when you're not talking about things that are tied to your alma mater, sir.
That'd be great. Yeah, I can go yell about the beauty that is modern day Indiana football.
Yes, and you can make fun of me and me past the point of yelling about a program that's currently 1-9.
Hey, you know what? Your program didn't import a false tiger.
True. That is
just to get boat raced by your rival.
Absolutely true. And that is stuff that we're going to be discussing for quite some time as we go. Jarrett, friend. I know that you got some real world stuff to get into. So as always, thanks for dropping by, and thanks for being here in the midweek on the X. We'll catch up with you soon.
Sounds good.
The online sports guys would love to hear from you. Go to our X page, formerly known as Twitter @OSG Sports, for a comment, rant, or just whatever is on your mind about college football.